Hi there. My name's Hank Hill, assistant manager of Strickland Propane. Now, my boss, Mr. Strickland, told me to go online and try to make new customers from the gamer demographic. Now, I don't know much about that, but while I'm here, you leave a video game in the thread, and I'll give you my honest opinion and review of it. If I don't know anything, well, I'll just make it up as I go based on what I do know. Alright, let's get this started. Oh yeah, baby, it's time for Doom. Now this classic here is not the one that's also called Doom that came out in the last couple years. No, this is the OG granddaddy, Doom. We're talking released on 30,000 different platforms Doom. We're talking probably got you kicked out of your school 'cause you shouldn't have been playing at Doom. Why, when I look at Doom Guy, I think that man must run on propane, because there's no greater fuel source to keep you going as long as Doom Guy keeps going. Just don't bring your propane tanks into hell, it's highly combustible. Overwatch. Yep, that's a good title for it, considering it has been overwatched on all those stupid streaming platforms. Now this game sucks. Why does it suck? I'll tell you. What kind of weird, twisted world do you live in where you give machines sentience to run around? Is this Terminator? Well, it certainly looked like it if you look at the lore, where there was some kind of omnic war, where they fought against the machines. It was Terminator 2. Now, I'm not going to say much more about that because the game's got nothing to do with that really interesting backstory, and instead is all about how many people can put their waifu in new costumes with their new loot boxes. I'll tell you what, if Mr. Strickland ever tried to put a loot box in our store, I'd have to put my foot down or put my foot up someone's ass. Not that it'd be his, that would be disrespectful to my boss. But I can't stand the entire community around this kind of game. In fact, they should call it Underwatch. In fact, they should really call it Not Under My Watch, because I would never let someone play this game. My son Bobby tried to play it once, and you know what he said to me? He said, "Dad, why does that girl always talk with the funny accent?" And I said to her, I said to him, my son's a boy, I said to him, "Son, you don't worry about that. In fact, go play something else. Go play outside." And he did. And that's what it means to be a parent in the year 2018. You don't let your boy play stupid games with stupid characters it's Hamtaro time. Like, that's the new character? Really? Well, alright. I'm not very impressed. The only blizzard that's coming here is when hell froze over and made me play it. Okami. Okami is a game where you play as some kind of wolf or god dog or whatever. I like to think of it as Ladybird in a costume. Anyway, you run around and do all sorts of magical, godlike stuff using your tail as a paintbrush, I think. It's pretty neat if you like watercolor, whatever, that fun, kooky art style that keeps the game coming back no matter how many years have passed since it was first released. Now, I remember my boy Bobby was telling me how much he loved this game, and so he went on that Twitter platform and he tweeted at that guy Hideki Kamiya, you know, the guy who's responsible for the game, and then he told me that guy blocked him online. Now, I don't know what that really means, but it sounds like a really cool football thing. And you know I love me some football, so naturally, this Hideki Okami-sama, yeah, he's alright. I'd put him on my draft team. Alright, now I've never been a gambling man. I like to work hard for my money and earn it the old-fashioned way. But if you want to go to Las Vegas and gamble away whatever you've got, that's your deal. Now, as far as Fallout New Vegas, well, what can I say? the guy on the cover's got a pretty nice looking gun, and from what I understand, the world's been ended by nuclear war, so there's a good chance you don't have much else to go off of, walking around in the wasteland and already what was a wasteland, but now it's got nuclear fallout and giant monsters in it. Anyway, the game's all about doing some kind of faction nonsense over an elaborate ruse under the guise of a poker chip. Now, I'm pretty sure they did that on Cowboy Bebop, but hey, who's keeping track of the writing anymore these days? Anyway, Fallout New Vegas is good if you want to waste a lot of time putting mods on your computer and playing a game with the guy from Friends being Benny or whatever. Or if you want to, live out your dreams of being a person who got shot in the head and walked away from it, well, you can do that too. Anyway, that's Fallout New Vegas. If you like the idea of wandering around in the old Wild West, but it's actually the future where everything's messed up and wonky, well then, your options are either, play that game or move to Texas. Devil May Cry 4, as you all know, is the sequel to the first 3 times the devil tried to stand up to God and lost. Now, if you're a God-fearing man like myself, you know not to fall for the devil's crocodile tears, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or in this case, 4 times. No matter how many times he tries to tempt you with his crying, don't fall for it. Stay on the path of righteousness, and remember, Bayonetta ended up being a better time anyway. Just like the time Bill dressed up as Santa Claus or went walking around the streets crying out the name Lenore while wearing a dress, this game is all about being a boy waking up half naked in a cave and walking out and taking a deep breath in the wild. Now, the game has more than just breathing. You also get to do other things like running, climbing, jumping, swimming, and all the other stuff you could have done for free if you just went outside. Now, what this game doesn't have is proper fishing. I don't want to throw bombs in water and blow 'em up. I'm not some kind of crazy redneck hillbilly blast fishing and destroying the ecosystem. I want to fish the old-fashioned way. I want a fishing rod. Of course, this game does not have one, so it's a -5 out of 10. Legend of Mana, a classic JRPG by the company that likes to have 4 sides on all of its titles. That's right, Square. Now, when I think of Legends of Mana, I instead like to think of the old biblical verse about the Jews walking in the desert, getting manna every morning that used to keep 'em well fed and alive for many years to come as they wandered in the desert. Instead of doing that, you're going to be running around fighting evil monsters and solving some kind of convoluted Square Enix fantasy plot. Of course, when I say Square Enix, I mean Squaresoft, because Square Enix didn't happen for several more years. But anyway, I don't know a whole lot about this. I usually think of Secret of Mana, which is a totally different title. But nonetheless, there you go. Fortnite is some kind of crazy popular new video game that somehow got away with doing the exact same thing as another game did the year before, but with a goofy, fun art style and those dance moves that you see on the black entertainment television. Anyway, the thing that makes this game real popular is, I'm not really sure, probably the thing I just mentioned. It's got all that pop culture reference stuff in it. It's got a lot of different kinds of people playing it. I don't really see the appeal. It just looks like a bunch of cartoon characters firing bazookas at each other. If I wanted that, I would have played Team Fortress or something. But anyway, that's what this game's all about. It's supposed to be like a battle royale, but that's not the, if I recall, the game was supposed to really be like a tower defense game, and they were like, hey, this other thing is real popular, And so instead of actually making a better game, the guys who made that other one, Poop G or whatever, they got mad about it and tried to sue the people over at the Epic Games. But I don't know how that turned out. You can't really copyright something that's like the Hunger Games and the Battle Royale and all those other things like, you know, the Gladiator Arena from ancient Rome. It's not really an original, idea. It's been happening for all of human history. But anyway, that's what the game's all about. I don't get it either. Waka Waka Waka. Pac-Man is an arcade game that was created to be the first e-sport about competitive eating. In this game, it's your job to eat more than everyone else. But the trick here is that everyone's a cannibal. So instead of eating just the pellets, which are, food, you also can sometimes eat a special seasoning that lets you get all zombified and comfortable with eating other people. Now, otherwise, the other people are trying to eat you. So the objective is to eat all the food while they're trying to eat you, and then you become the food-eating champion of the world, and if you're really good at it, you can use Pac-Man on your hot sauce company, and get labeled as the greatest video game player of all time until everyone exposes you for cheating at Donkey Kong or something. El Shaddai, a game about sleeping according to the Spanish translation my wife gave me. Anyway, this game, El Shaddai, Ascension of the Metatron, was developed by UTV Ignition Games and has a PEGI 12 rating. Once again, shoutouts to my wife Peggy. According to Eurogamer.net, it's got a 9 out of 10, so it must be a really good sleep. Either way, remember to always try to get 8 hours of sleep every night, and don't stay up all night playing El Shaddai, unless you're getting the old El Shaddai. Rise of the Robots, or as I like to call it, the backstory from Overwatch that we tried to warn you about in Terminator 2. This game, released on the Sega Mega Drive, is all about robots rising. Whether it's rising from the computer that created them, or rising up against humankind, one thing's for sure. Black Panther's gonna stop 'em. At least that's what the box art tells me. Crusader Kings 2. This is the tale of an era in which democracy did not exist. That's right, we're talking a living nightmare. Nothing's quite as good as the American way. That's why Superman, who's not even born in America, lives by it. As for Crusader Kings 2, the sequel to Crusader Kings, the game is all about being some kind of Crusader King leading the Crusaders or whatever other kind of military operation you got going on as you conquer all the other different countries around the world, using your own methods of subterfuge and domination to be the #1 Crusader King. Now, at least if you had some kind of religious backing to justify your holy crusade, that would make sense, I mean, sometimes people do what they gotta do for the name of the Lord they believe in, but I think, once again, we're better off just trusting in our political system here in the good old United States and being a part of the democratic process. We don't need no more violence and war. All we need is reliable transport, friendly neighbors, and a good old tank of propane. Worm Online, much like the Alien sequel Aliens, is a prequel to the game Worms. In Worm Online, you and your fellow worm friends use weapons to fight against other players for total domination of the map. Now, I'm not saying that you gotta fight for your right to play online games, but at the time of dial-up, this sort of thing was just undoable. Now we live in a golden age, where people not only spell worm properly, but also can play online, no matter where they are on planet Earth. Mystical Ninja Mystical Ninja Goemon it's a game about a Digimon named Goemon who's actually a mystical ninja who runs around collecting all the different Pokemon so he can bring them back to his ninja village and become the Hokage. Senran Kagura is a game where you run around in your bikini and shoot other girls with guns. Water guns. Now other times, you're also ninja girls, and in this game, you show how much damage you've taken by how much your clothes have been destroyed. Also, this is the Peach Beach Splash version. I'm not quite sure how much different that makes it. I don't know if there's like an orange or apple version as well, but usually these kinds of games, you're coming into them not for the gameplay, but for the gameplay. Now, this kind of thing, I would never let it in my house. In fact, I don't even want to talk about it anymore, but I will. You can collect all sorts of different outfits and different girls to show off your skills with a water gun. And as always, remember, if you can't keep both hands on the controller, you're not playing right. Street Fighter, the legendary fighting game series with only even-numbered entries. Street Fighter's a great way to settle different problems, whether it's a fast-paced battle in Street Fighter II Turbo, or some kind of really interesting revival of the fighting game genre in Street Fighter IV. Street Fighter's a great series no matter who you are or what country you come from, and each year they add new representatives from different countries around the world. It's a great way to stay in shape and have fun as a fighting game player, especially if you're Japanese. If you're not, don't expect to go very far. There are exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, remember, if you ain't been playing it since the 1980s, don't count on getting very good at it now. Radiata Stories, a game about sunbathing, and all the different tales you can experience while sitting out in the sun. Some of the chapters are about sunburn, others about skin cancer. Some of them are about a dry season where nobody's plants grew. You never know with Square, especially once they became Square Enix. They're always trying new things with their games. Why, just the other day, I was playing that Octopath Traveler. I didn't see one single octopus in that game. Now you explain that to me. I sure can't. Anyway, Radiata Stories. Be sure to put on sunscreen, especially if you got real light complexion. Stronger SPF means you got a stronger chance of coming home safe. Dark Souls. A game where you spend all of your time running around trying to set fires like some kind of arsonist. Dark Souls is really about the path of enlightenment that you go on as you approach the end of your life. It's not exactly the most clear-cut way to explain this very serious time in one's life, but it gets the point across, I guess. You have died. You have died. You have died. It really wants to make sure you're aware, since you won't probably be able to hear it when you do die. They want you to know that's what it would be like when it finally does happen. Now, you can do this in many different ways, just like life itself. You can run around casting magic spells, or you can run around swinging around a sword. In real life, you could be a police officer, or a person running around with a sword. So really, it's just like real life. Yakuza. The Yakuza series takes place in a far-off land known as Japan, where I have a half-brother. Now, according to my half-brother, who I called before doing this review, he says that it's bad to talk about the Yakuza. Fortunately, we live in the good old US of A, so I don't have to worry about no problems coming from that. Now, the Yakuza are like the Japanese Mafia, and this game is all about being the most nice, pleasant Mafia man there ever was, with a nice right hook. Cosmic Kiryu, real strong, covered in tattoos, the Dragon of Dojima, the one, the only, Dokkan. He is the one who fights with justice in his heart. It's really a beautiful story, a timeless franchise, and one that we're really starting to see a lot of here in the United States and the rest of the Western world. I definitely recommend playing this franchise without a question. I know it's got an M rating for mature, but I'm sure you can handle it. Ah yes, Propane, the game based on my life as a propane salesman, but made a little bit more dramatic for special flair. Propane, released by Strickland Propane Publishing, is on the PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, and PC. You can also play it on an Xbox, but not a lot of people have those. Anyway, the way this game works is you go to places where they don't use propane, such as charcoal grill huts and other places such as those, and you deliver the propane. You bring in a giant tank of propane and show them the differences between your clean-burning fuel and their nasty charcoal. By the end of the barbecue, if you've convinced enough people of the very obvious correct choice to use propane as your grilling solution, you win. 10 out of 10, go buy it. Boktai, The Sun is in Your Hand. A very creative title, because the game uses a solar-powered Game Power pack in the Game Boy Color Game Boy Advance title. Yep, Boktai is a game that uses the sun when you play it. Now, obviously, you're probably wondering, how am I going to play this game if I live in Alaska? The answer is you're not, because chances of you finding a copy of Boktai are next to non-existent. Anyway, if you like these kinds of weird games that have unique quirks published by Konami, well, you're in luck. Unless you didn't buy it already, in which case, you're SOL. That's super out of luck. Ed, Edd and Eddy Online is probably one of the greatest games ever released for online platforms, and even just video games in general. Now, if you're like me, you've been a fan of the Ed shenanigans for a long time. Well, good news. This game makes note of all of them. There is no moment not referenced in this wonderful online title. It's got all sorts of different components, as well as unique special movesets that are exclusive to certain characters based on different episodes of Ed, Edd and Eddy. Now, this isn't like your modern-day gotcha-pawn nonsense mobile game. This was a hard-hitting, you-earned-your-characters kind of title. There was no limited season to unlock characters, with the exception of a couple of holiday-themed ones, like the Cupid Arrow, and, of course, the different Three Wise Men. But aside from that, the majority of the characters could be unlocked with sheer determination. Now, as far as the quality of the gameplay, it is what you expect. It is Ed, Edd and Eddy translated to an online experience that is absolutely flawless. If I could give this game a higher than 10 score, I'd give it 20 Eds out of Ed. It would have 20 Ds on the end of the word Ed. That's how good Ed, Edd and Eddy Online is. As for those of you wondering, yes, I am absolutely a Rolf main, and I like to use Vengeful Rolf above all other characters. but sometimes I like to use Sumo Jimmy as well. Persona 5 is the sequel to the highly popular Persona 4 Diamond is Unbreakable. In Persona 5, your character, Joker Giovanna, joins the Italian Mafia in order to thwart the illegal drug businesses that are going around and ruining the country of Italy. On your adventure, you'll have to fight your way up the Mafia ranks alongside your dear friend, Bruno Bucciolotti, and his sticky fingers. This game is very interesting because it was never brought to the United States, because Prince was very secure about his property rights and his IP, and because Joker Giovanna was based on him, he didn't want him to be here. Now, the only reason I know all this is that once again, my half-brother from Japan is a big fan of different games out of there, and so he told me to let my son Bobby try this one, but then Bobby doesn't know how to read Japanese, so I don't really know what I'm going to do about that. Maybe I'll get an English copy. Mr. Strickland warned me about you. He told me you'd come here, Thatherton. Now why don't you take your cheap propane and shove it somewhere else? I don't need your negative attitude trying to get between me and my new friends here as I review these games. Now why don't you get moving before I shove my foot up your ass? God of War, a reboot of the very popular title God of War, which had sequels such as God of War 2 and God of War 3. God of War 2018 is a game about a man and his son, or something to that effect anyway, walking around through ancient Norse mythology and going on their grand adventures. Now for those of you who are interested in the craziness of Kratos and his old adventures, you're going to be sorely disappointed that he's not the same angry, violent man that he used to be. He's still violent, but he's replaced his anger with a modicum of compassion and sympathy. Now, if you're interested in playing a game that likes to cash in on the old hype while also offering some sort of new way to follow up a long retired franchise, this is the game for you. Remember, if it's on PlayStation, it's all about the cinematics. It's going to look great. I don't have any opinion on how it's going to play, but if you like watching movies, well, PlayStation's the console for you. Deus Ex. Popularized by dialogue such as "It's a bomb," this game is highly unwelcome on different TSA searches. Now, if you're not flying a plane, great. You can sit at your PC and play Deus Ex. The game is all about being in a cyborg augmented world where there's a different kind of dystopia around you. The game has the same kind of underlying memes and lore as Metal Gear Solid, but I don't think it's as popular as Metal Gear Solid is on the world stage. That doesn't mean it's not a good game. It just means that it's not as well known, even though it's got a lot of the same messages and ideology under its hood. Now, if you're into that kind of thing, guess what? This is a game for you. Be sure to check it out. You can get it for real cheap because it's an old PC title at this point. But, let's face it, you never asked for this. You see, that was a reference to the other one. Conker's Bad Fur Day. In this game, designed for grown-ups who are too mature to play Banjo-Kazooie, or the sequel, Banjo-Tooie, or just those who wanted to have more characters from Diddy Kong Racing in their own original video games, is all about being a degenerate, rat, squirrel, whatever, running around pressing your buttons with context sensitivity, making poop jokes, drinking alcohol, and chasing your big-breasted squirrel waifu. Or girlfriend or whatever. Anyway, the game's filled with different references to other movies and games and stuff. It's really an inferior platformer to Banjo-Kazooie, so you're gonna be here for the inappropriate humor above all else. You like a flower with big titties? Well, you got it, buddy. You're gonna think you're eating at Sugars when you're playing this game. Pokemon Red version and Pokemon Blue version. Now, I know what you're thinking. Are these two separate games? What makes them different? Well, my friend, just like I would tell you to pick one kind of truck over another, it's just simply a matter of your preference of paint color. In these games, almost everything's identical, except for the fact that the Pokemon, or pocket monsters as they're called, are different between the two titles. At the end of the day, the majority of them don't really come off as that different, but they thought, hey, how can we get more money out of these American children who don't know any better and the parents who are going to buy the game for them? Well, the answer was to release multiple versions so that the kids had to buy more than one or find a reason to own the Game Boy Link cable, which continued to be a pestilent problem until the late wireless era of the Nintendo DS. Not counting the wireless attachment made for the Game Boy Advance with Fire Red and Leaf Green, which are remakes of these games. Now, let's actually talk about the gameplay, because it's been a while. The game is simple. You walk around and you collect pocket monsters by beating them up and then throwing a ball at them that captures them. It's a lot like hunting, which is a great pastime for those who like to go out and do it the old-fashioned way to put food on your table. But you don't eat the Pokemon. No. You just beat them up with other Pokemon. This is very similar to the very, very inappropriate sport of dog fighting, cockfighting, and other animal sports that rely on them being hurt. I personally do not endorse such kinds of activities, and I don't think that we should endorse games that do the very same thing. Now, if you're going to raise up your arms against this company, Nintendo, and their degenerate friends, Game Freak, they already know. They put it in their own name. They're messed up in the head. I can't do much about that. But if you think you're going to get my ladybird to start fighting with other animals, you've got another thing coming. I'm going to put my foot up your ass, and we'll see who's the real Pokemon master now. Killing Floor 2. All the zombies and violence that you saw in Killing Floor 1, now with 200% more obnoxious British accents. If you couldn't stand 'em before, you're still not going to be able to stand 'em now. To be honest, I don't really know why they call it Killing Floor. You spend most of your time jumping around, stabbing zombies that are already dead. How do you kill the undead? Are they double dead? I don't really know. Not my problem. Golden Sun. Oh, I am so glad to be talking about this absolute gem. Golden Sun is an original RPG released on the Game Boy Advance. This game combines elements of traditional RPG and overworld puzzles using psychic power that they call synergy. This power lets you do things like telepathically move objects or read people's minds, and solve different interesting challenges using the power of your friendship and your psychic abilities. This game has some of the most fun music you could find in an RPG, and I believe it's really due for a proper sequel because Dark Dawn just didn't cut it. If you like Golden Sun, you should definitely play the sequel, Golden Sun: The Lost Age, and bring your data over, but of course, try not to get overwhelmed by the 6 pages of code you're going to have to write to translate your game copy to the other one. Anyway, Golden Sun has a lot of amazing things in it. You can go around and hunt different things called Jinn, which basically are like magical little Pokemon creatures that you can summon in battle to fight alongside you with a special attack and then use their power to summon giant things. You can walk around and do your psychic powers in battle. You can talk to different people but then read their minds and see what they're really thinking. I'd like to hearken this to being a propane salesman with the ability to know exactly what to say to any customer who came in needing a great deal on a new propane unit but didn't know exactly how to word what they were looking for. If I had the powers from Golden Sun, I could just read their mind and say, "Oh, you need this brand new grill. Don't worry, it'll cook those hot dogs just right." That's the kind of game Golden Sun is. You use your psychic powers for good. Also, there's some bad guys with psychic powers and a bunch of monsters everywhere. It's an RPG. This is an amazing game. I recommend it. I don't care if you call it baby's first role-playing game. I don't care what you call it. I call it an amazing time. 10 out of 10. Sonic the Hedgehog 3, or as most like to call it, Sonic and Knuckles and Michael Jackson music. This game, released for the Sega Genesis, is essentially the tantamount Sonic experience after Sonic 2. This game gives you more Sonic than ever before, with all sorts of crazy expansions and fast-moving blue hedgehogs that you could ask for. Now, the thing is, I'm pretty sure hedgehogs don't really move that fast, and I'm also pretty sure they're not blue. So this game gets a 2 out of 10 because it's highly inaccurate. Also, Teddy Roosevelt's the main bad guy, and I just can't imagine that in my mind being accurate. He was a good man. Dragon Ball FighterZ, or Fighter Z, or whatever the heck you want to call it. It's a Dragon Ball fighting game developed by Arc Sys. This game is probably one of the best anime fighters ever created. The only thing it really lacks is a lack of Goku. There's a lot of that guy Goku. Now I know Goku can appreciate a good steak, but man, I don't want to have to feed all of them. Now, the game itself has some pretty fun mechanics and does a great job of capturing the spirit of Dragon Ball, with all of your favorite mainstays, like Android 16, and Android 17, and Android 18. The game has it all. It also has a lot of Gokus. Now, I personally don't think it's worth buying DLC for a game, because, well, unless I really want to play the character, which I don't, I'm not going to buy it. Now, that said, if you're not putting Vegeta on your team, you better have a good alternative like Yamcha, 'cause if you don't, you're going to be grilling with charcoal for the rest of your days. I often wonder what the effect of a Ki Blast would be in lieu of a proper barbecuing station. But then I remember, you gotta cook your steak a little bit closer on the rare side than the well done. Otherwise, you're just making mistakes with your life. And I feel like a Final Flash or something like that, or maybe a garlic gun. I don't want all that garlic on my steak. What are you doing? Anyway, that's my opinion on Dragon Ball FighterZ. Definitely worth playing if you like Dragon Ball and you like fighters. Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Now I know what most people are going to say about this game. It's too slow, it's too floaty. I don't like how I trip over myself. Yes, I understand, those are valid criticisms. But I also feel, well, frankly, that's just not fair. Let's take a look at when the game came out and what all went into it. Smash Bros. Brawl is a game loaded to the brim with content and unbelievable crossovers with characters like Sonic and Snake appearing for the first time in the respective series of Super Smash Bros. This was unheard of. And I mean, most people hadn't even heard of the idea. A lot of people don't play video games these days. But anyway, the game has an amazing UI. It's very intuitive. It's got terrific items. And when it comes to innovations to the Smash Bros. Franchise, it introduced things like assist trophies and smash balls, and also gave us a really fun cast of characters that, again, most people didn't see coming. So a lot of people will talk badly about Super Smash Bros. Brawl, but I'm gonna give it the Hank Hill seal of approval. This is a good game. If you don't like it, you just don't like having fun. You're probably some kind of elitist. If you like other games better, that's fine. But if you're going to put down Smash Bros. Brawl because it's not exactly to your liking, well, chances are you're probably the kind of person who plays the same video game for like 14 years, a game that's never once been balanced or patched, and worships the same 5 people going in circles for the last 15 years over who's the best, when it's never going to be anyone but those same people, because they've got the mastery of it, until eventually they get too old to play the game like an old retired boxer, and they have to pass on to the next generation. But of course, you're never going to run out of players because you like to keep a game alive, despite the fact that it's obviously not completely balanced in the way that you like to worship it. Anyway, Smash Bros. Brawl is a good time. I recommend it. Ninja Gaiden Black, or as I like to call it, the non-Halo reason to own an original Xbox. Ninja Gaiden Black is an absolutely phenomenal game with really cool mechanics. This is a game that shows you how to be a ninja the hard way. And we're not talking about sneaking past regular people. No, we're sneaking past giant snakes, serpents, man-eating fish, god monsters, and who knows what else. This thing's more kooky than one of those Japanese animes. Now, it's pretty interesting to watch because it's got really high intense action gameplay with really cool ninja arts to do everything around it, wall running, and all the things you'd expect to see from a high quality ninja like Ryu Hayabusa. Now, if you've never played Ninja Gaiden Black, that's a shame, but you can still see cool evidence of it on the internet or try to get a copy for yourself. If you're a fan of high intensity action games, Ninja Gaiden Black is definitely a viable choice for you. Replay. Oh. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. The game that people like to say is the most revolutionary innovation into the 3D space. Now, that's great and all, but you know what's even more revolutionary? The power of propane grilling. You can cook as many steaks as you like on a single grill with the evenly distributed heat burning sensation that comes from a propane tank. Now, if you're looking for something along those lines, I might suggest visiting us at Strickland Propane. If you're not looking for propane, but instead would like to hear more about The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, I don't know what you're asking me for. Other people don't shut the hell up about it. Frankly, I'm getting so tired of hearing about this game, I'm just gonna have to stop talking about it. I'll say one thing, though. I always thought it was kind of cool that the flute from Mario 3 is the do-do-do-do-do-do is in the beginning of the game on the menu screen. Yep. Lots of people have dreams, but sometimes those dreams can be very elaborate. Enter Yume Nikki. This game, where you run around inside of your dreams and experience different things in the dream world while documenting them in your dream journal, is a great way to explore the inner workings of this young girl. The game has beautiful sound, and it often makes me think, gee, if I could remember my dreams, I'd have an even more vivid soundtrack. The sound of freshly grilled food. The sound of wonderful truck engines revving. And of course, the sound of the national anthem. I love my country. This is a country where dreams come true. Long live the United States of America. Whether it's John Redcorn playing on his guitar or some crazy new bluegrass group, there's plenty of music in Arlen, Texas. That said, a franchise called Rhythm Heaven brings even more music to the table. Now I know what you're thinking. Rhythm Heaven? Is this some kind of weird, inappropriate thing? The answer is no, though there are things of that nature on the internet. Now, when I say Rhythm Heaven, I do mean it's heavenly. For those of you who like the WarioWare games, this is that, but the music form, and it's awesome. The art is terrific, the experience is fun, yet simple, and the games are charming, quirky, and quick. If you're not a fan of Rhythm Heaven, dang it, you're no friend of mine. Mother 3. Now, I know most of you would expect this to be about some kind of role-playing game, a sequel to what the Americans call Earthbound, but in fact, Mother 3 is my father's new wife. I don't know why he insists I call her Mother 3, but I don't want to. I've got one mama, and that's all I need. Now, if you'll excuse me, my dad's outside, telling me to let him and Mother 3 inside the house. And as much as I'd prefer not to, a man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. In the world of massive multiplayer online games, there are many options to choose from. Now, I'm not going to tell you about all of them, but right now the game I'm going to talk about is a one called Run Escape. In Run Escape, it's your job to try to run from people who are trying to buy GF. I still don't know what GF is, but I always see people talking about buying it, and I feel wrong reading it. It feels dirty. Now, maybe one day I'll discover the meaning of GF, but until then, I'm going to continue to run and escape until I run out of my membership card. Whoa, 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 whoa. That's right. It's time for Halo, the series that really cemented the role of Xbox among the big three back in the 2000s. Halo as a franchise is a real bit of a conundrum because it's about space, aliens, soldiers, and giant halos. Now, if you're a God-fearing man like myself, you think of a halo as something you'd see on top of an angel. That is not the kind of halo in this game. The Master Chief, your star student of the Spartan program, has gone through numerous crazy missions, all of them revolving around these ancient weapons called halos. The gameplay of these games is timeless. Unfortunately, it seems to deteriorate with each new release. sometimes it's better to let things go. I, for one, would have been okay with it not continuing. Nonetheless, Halo's an important piece of gaming history, and I highly recommend the original trilogy.